Alright guys, this is John Davis, Link Savad, whatever you want to call me, just don't call me late for dinner. I am currently wanting to explain things in a more simplified version for all those that is just overloaded with the information or that they came in late. And I want to explain it in a simpler version so you can get the basics. Those of us who have been in on this, who have been part of it or have researched like crazy, we know a lot of the basics. Most of you people out there may not know the basics, so I'm going to show you the basics. Right here is a good story. It's about the Hammonds, but it gives a lot of good information. And I'm going to give you the basic information and explain things as I go along. The Harney Basin, which is part of Harney County, where the Hammond Ranch is, was settled in the 1870s, quite a while ago. Multiple ranchers settled here, had over 300,000 head of cattle. That's a lot of cattle. But there's a lot of land, too. So, they developed a state-of-the-art, at that time, irrigation system to water the meadows, and it became a great place for the migratory birds. Whenever they would go north or come south. I mean, basically, they enjoyed stopping by here, refeeding, getting water, and heading on through. This was created by the ranchers, okay? The ranchers knew how to make it so all of the animals would be able to handle things and be more than welcomed here. In 1908, President Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, basically created an Indian reservation around the Mount here, Mud and Harney Lakes, and declared it as a preserve for breeding ground of native birds. Later, this Indian reservation, without the Indians, became the Mount Here National Wildlife Refuge. Now, honestly, by the Constitution, Teddy Roosevelt did not have the power to do that, but it was accepted. And Teddy was a really big game hunter. He loved hunting. He loved going out and hunting animals. He made a lot of these different reservations, as this, just my opinion, was his own private hunting grounds. He was able to go there anytime he wanted and shoot the geese or whatever. It was never intended for the Indians. This land was the ranchers originally, and then Teddy Roosevelt grabbed a hold of it and put it as a refuge. About the now, with the Hammonds in 1964, they purchased their ranch in the Harney Basin. About 6,000 acres of private property. 4 grazing rights on public land, which that was supposed to be Harney County Mount Here Refuge land, but that's supposed to be public. They had got a small ranch house and 3 water rights. Now, water rights here is very important because with like the irrigation system, we here have to figure out a way to just get the water out to the land, because it's not raining here on a continuous basis. It is called the high desert for a reason. Very little rain, and during the winter a lot of snow, and that snow, the melt-off, comes down and soaks up in the land, and that usually lasts for most of the year, or it's supposed to. These ranchers that made the irrigation system figured out a way to make it so that it was a nice wetlands for a while. But water rights are very important. By the 1970s, Nearly all the ranchers adjacent to the Blitzen Valley were purchased by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and added to the Mount Hare National Wildlife Refuge. Basically, an unconstitutional organization came in and grabbed or bought, probably on pennies on the dollar or a dime on the dollar. I don't know the actual facts on that, but we know how the government works. Basically, they bought out the ranches, because it is hard work here to be a rancher, but it is rewarding work. They bought out the ranches and added it to the refuge. It's like, okay, that's nice. Now the refuge at that time covers about 187,000 acres and stretches over 45 miles long and 37 miles wide. I'm sorry, most cities are not even close to that. The refuge grew and surrounded the Hammond Ranch. The Hammonds held out. They held out as long as they could. Fish and Wildlife Service approached the Hammonds multiple times, and they refused to sell. Other ranchers chose not to sell. In the 1970s, the Fish and Wildlife Service, in conjunction with the Bureau of Land Management, which is another unconstitutional organization, took a different approach to get the ranchers to sell. They were told that the grazing was detrimental to the wildlife and must be reduced. Basically, they were saying that, oh, your cows, they're destroying the property, so we're going to have to reduce it to let the grass grow. You know what? When that happened, when they went from 53 permits to only 32 permits, oh wait, nope, reverse that. 32 out of the 53 permits were revoked, and many ranchers were forced to leave, because where are their cows going to get the grazing? Because growing hay here is very difficult. Buying hay is really expensive, so the grazing is actually a benefit. Grazing fees were raised significantly, and the refuge personnel took over the irrigation system, claiming it as their own. They took over something that ranchers built, and the ranchers that knew the land built and made it work great. They took it over, and it actually went to hell. They couldn't figure out how to work it properly. Kind of odd. Basically, the BLM actually took over ranching land, and then basically was not able to manage it properly the way it's needed here for wildlife to actually enjoy it. So by what I understand and by what I've seen is, yes, the refuge will have some birds, some waterfowl, because that's water there. But if you really want to see where the birds really go, they go to the ranchers' land, because the ranchers don't let the grass grow so big and just stay there, which is known, I believe, called wolf grass. It's so high that the birds land there in the water or on the ground, and there could be a predator in the grass, and the birds know this. It's just instinct for them, so they go to some place that the grass is more tamped down or grazed off. Well, gee, how is that detrimental to the birds at the refuge? How is the grazing messing up the refuge, the wildlife there? It's not. It actually was helping the wildlife. I grew up here. I saw this. By 1980, a conflict was well on its way over water allocations on the adjacent privately owned Sylvies Plain. The Fish and Wildlife Service wanted to acquire the ranch lands on the Sylvies Plain to add to their already vast holdings. They have thousands of acres. They want more. The refuge personnel intentionally diverted the water, bypassing the vast meadowlands, directing the water to the rising Mount Hare lakes. Basically, they were depriving the land that wasn't a part of their land yet of water, much needed water. They were killing the land. Honestly, how good is that on managing the land? Within a few short years, the surface areas of the lakes doubled. 31 ranchers on the Silvies Plains were flooded. Honestly, think about that. The BLM is managing the land, and they're altering the natural courses or even the original irrigation system. They're drying up parts of the land and flooding out ranchers so they can grab that land. Gee, how does that work? Homes, corrals, barns, and grazed lands were washed away and destroyed. If any of you have ever been in a flooded area, and even if you haven't, even if your sink has flooded, imagine the government coming in, plugging up your sink, turning on the water and saying, "Don't touch this. We control the water." And it just floods your kitchen like crazy. How is that actually a good thing? They want your apartment. They're going to flood it out so that you have to sell it because, well, you can't control it. Or they want your home. They're going to do that so you cannot fix it up and they can take it and make it into a parking lot or whatever they want to do with it. That's basically what happened here. The ranchers who fought to keep the Fish and Wildlife Service from taking their land, now broke and destroyed, begged the Fish and Wildlife Service to acquire their useless ranches at a huge discount of what the ranches really were worth. I'm pretty sure they lost money on it. In 1989, the waters began to recede. Now the once thriving privately owned Silvies Plains are a proud part of the Mount Hare National Wildlife Refuge, claimed by the Fish and Wildlife Service. Excuse me, guys. I just got to pause right there and look at it. Look at that. They already own 187,000 acres. Well, not a fully 187,000 acres at that time, but thanks to flooding them out and destroying their livelihood, they managed to gain a crapload of acreages. Lots of miles of land they don't know how to manage properly. Land that the animals are actually mostly ignoring. You go out to the refuge whenever all this is done. If you ever go out to the refuge, you'll look at it and there won't be hardly any animals there. You'll see some beautiful birds out there, some very nice hawks, very nice eagles, but they stop for a short bit and continue on to the rancher's land. The BLM are saying, oh, well, since they're going over there, we need to get that land too. They're not thinking, hey, what are the ranchers doing to get all the animals on their land, and why aren't the animals staying at our land? They're not thinking that. Why? Because of the mineral rights. This is a federally owned organization. And with it being federally owned, which by the Constitution, the government cannot own land except a 10-mile radius around Washington, D.C. They cannot own any land. They can only have buildings, like our post offices. But they've done the whole lawyer fang-dangling, brought in different interpretations, and they're basically ignoring the Constitution, what our forefathers fought and died for. So I ask you, if the government wants to come in and take your home that you have worked for, or you might have even built on with your own two hands, something that you love, something that you feel secure in, and they flood you out, or they blockade you, or they basically just intimidate you. If they bought it at the retail value, then you might be like, okay, yeah, that's fine, I'll go get another house. Well, you just gave them that land, and whatever minerals were underneath of there, if you would have had some gold down there, imagine what you would have been like if you would have realized that. Most of these ranchers don't realize they have uranium, gold, lots of minerals underneath their land. They don't realize that because the study was not really made public for a long time. Give the government enough time to figure out what to do to grab those lands. You leave, buy another house. If it's at market value, that's great. But what if they decide to come and take your house? And let's say your house is worth $150,000. You worked years to build that house up, and they buy it for $15,000, or maybe $25,000, or even $50,000. It's worth $150,000, and the government, because you're in distress and everything, goes, yeah, we'll give you the money right now, but we're not going to be able to give you market price. We'll only give you this much. Think on it, guys. This will conclude my first, say it simply, explanation of what's coming here, what's happening here in Burns, Oregon. And I will try to make it to where you guys can understand it. If you've got questions, please put it on my YouTube channel, and I will try to answer them the best I can. Thank you very much, and you guys have a great day.